When it comes to media articles, these companies try to mislead people into telling them that what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. If you want to lose fat, perfectly achievable. Losing fat from a specific area, we aren't able to target. That's not in our control. It's part of our genetical structure, and that determines mainly, as well as being a female fit male, where you're going to lose fat from initially when you lose fat. If you're wanting to get a six-pack, which the process to getting one is fairly tough, because for a lot of people the six-pack is the last area where fat really drops off from. Look, personally, I've done it myself. The amount of sacrifice I had to go through in my life in order to get that just aesthetic result of how I looked good, that was just not a sustainable way to live anyway. And not to mention the fact that this 3-week time period is being mentioned, that's horrendously quick in order to try and make someone believe that they can achieve an aesthetic based result when the article doesn't even know the person that they're speaking out to. Generally, losing fat in a quick way is a very unadvisable way because of the amount of sacrifice that your life is already taking in the 3 weeks, let alone after the 3 weeks. Trying to maintain that doesn't talk about life, it just talks about the 3 weeks, and then from after the 3 weeks to the rest of your life, the article producer doesn't give a crap, you know what I mean? Because they are telling you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. For a lot of people, if you're wanting to really reveal the six-pack, no matter if you train abdominals and gain abdominal strength and definition, the midsection is one of the last areas that we can lose fat from. It's one of the areas that a lot of us store the most fat in. Now, women tend to store fat around the arms, shoulders, back, for example. Like I said, we cannot determine where we lose fat from initially. If we want to reveal the midsection and get a nice aesthetic look, then most of us are going to have to go through a process to losing fat, and then to carry on losing fat in order to reveal the midsection, because that is probably not going to be the area that fat comes off first. We're not in control of where we choose to lose fat. Now, if you work on certain, say biceps, for example, contracting the bicep frequently over time, you'll develop lean muscle tissue in the bicep. Only once body fat reduces from wherever it does and then reduces around the arm, then you're going to have a good amount of muscle to appear. So it can be the same for the abdominals. Say there's a swimming pool that's, instead of it being water, it's fat. You can scoop fat out of the corner of the swimming pool, wanting to reduce fat in the corner of that swimming pool. Not going to happen. The whole level of the swimming pool will gradually reduce because you can't determine where you remove that fat from. Do you understand that analogy? Hope you do. So let me now tell you how that should be worded. The resistance aspect of it, in terms of lifting weights for the full body, that's going to develop a really good amount of lean muscle tissue. If you frequently decide to use weights, contract muscles, it's going to build lean muscle tissue. That's a big part of our metabolism and how our metabolism uses energy. Look at my metabolism video to understand how metabolism works for fat loss. Also, having self-respect for yourself, knowing the right amount of calories so that you're eating in a zone to which you lose body fat from. Not eating stupidly and cutting out and withdrawing things, creating bad psychology. It's not the way to go. You've really got to know. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you much more than this in this video because many people will see it who have different needs. So when it comes to just your relationship with food and how you eat, you've got to eat the right amount to be losing fat. And this comes in a zone and pretty much a target of what you should be eating and not going above it, so that if you do go above it and keep going above it over time, then that will result in body fat storage. There's many ways that diets work, like intermittent fasting, keto diet, there's loads, all right? But each diet, it's just a tool in order to help somebody restrict the amount of calories that they're eating so that they're not going to get fat. Let me say keto, for example. Many people love it because they try and persuade other people to not eat carbs. Carbs are not bad. Carb is an individual component of food which can contribute to the calories that you eat, just like protein or fat. But with carbohydrates, for some people, they often end up being a food that's overeaten because it may be palatable, for example. And when people start to cut the carbohydrates off of their way of eating, then these people notice they're not eating as much because they're not overdoing the amount of carbs that they have. And it just so happens that having protein and fat, very little or no carbs, is their way, it's their system of not eating as much food and energy because they don't overeat and they feel satisfied with just having enough protein and fat. That's their way of doing it. If you start to reduce the amount of carbohydrates you consume, do not step on the scales and see that as a victory to body fat loss, because it will definitely be water weight retention just plummeting because you've not consumed as many carbs. Carbohydrates, they store water in your cells. So 1 gram of carbohydrate stores 3 to 5 grams of water in your muscle cells. So just do not get misled by the fact that reducing carbs will instantly take body fat off. As for intermittent fasting, everybody does intermittent fasting if you sleep. Whether you're, all it is, it's stopping eating, letting time pass, and then eating again. And that normally happens at the end of a night and at the start of a morning. All this intermittent fasting is just allowing a period of no eating and no digesting in your 24-hour life. And without going into fasting too much, like when you're fasted, empty stomach, you're not digesting, lots of processes and hormones in the body can get to work, like with healing, for example, cellular repair. But when it comes to fasting, cutting out this certain time frame of not eating, all it does is just helps you not intake any calories in that period. Say if somebody fasts in the morning, they don't consume or metabolize anything, and then at 12 p.m, noon, they start their eating window, they consume food, they can consume food until 8 p.m, then they just stop consuming food. In that 8-hour period, that's the time that they get to eat, and the shorter the window, often the easier it is for somebody to not consume as many calories, because you can be fairly full from your first meal from 12, then maybe at 4 o'clock have something, and then have a meal at 7:30, and then that's it. It's just a tool to ensure that somebody doesn't overconsume food and calories, because if you start eating from 7 a.m, breakfast, and then 12 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, from 9 o'clock at night until 7 a.m, how many hours is that? That's 10 hours. So it just so happens that a person may be susceptible to eating more if they start eating early and eat throughout the day and then finish eating late, because it just ends up being more food really. But that might not be the case. If you're stupid and eat a lot, even in a short window, you can consume. It's all about the calories. It's all about being conscious about the calories that you've eaten in that window, regardless of what times you're eating, what times you're selecting, and whatever the hell that you're doing. Like, fat loss really does not need to be made this difficult to understand and grasp, because of all the articles and headlines, conflicting advice, one thing to another. Like, having self-respect, consciously ensuring that you're expending maybe more energy physically whilst keeping what you may be eating the same. Initially, it's going to help to lose fat, or you can work on them both, expend a few hundred calories, decrease a few hundred calories. It's about consciously knowing what you have. So it does help to know what you can measure, you can improve. So when it comes to fat loss, ab reveal, 3 weeks, dumbbells. The only decent thing is that it promotes lean muscle tissue by resistance exercise. So when you develop lean muscle tissue, for example, doing squats, deadlifts, bench press, shoulders, it promotes lean muscle tissue in the big areas of your body, large muscle groups, quads, hamstrings, glutes, chest, shoulders, and that is really efficient at using up your metabolism when you are resting, because you've created some damage in the muscle tissue which repairs, recovers, and that demands some energy to do so. And then once you've got lean muscle tissue, maintaining that lean muscle, that takes energy from your body, as opposed to not even having it. So main take home from this is really not to believe articles that tell you what you want to hear. They're fairly unnecessary to you personally as an individual. Take it from somebody who's telling you what you need to hear, and I've done it myself. I know exactly what it takes to get a six-pack, and for the vast majority of people, it's not a sustainable way to live for such an aesthetic little result that gets covered up by a t-shirt anyway, especially if you live in the UK. Like, you're only really having top off in summer, aren't you? Let's be honest. Staying motivated to achieve a six-pack, good luck. It's not what people really want. Like, having a purposeful why and purpose behind just improving your body over time, that's going to do far many more benefits for somebody than just solely focusing on a look achievement over a very short amount of time. That's not how we want to live, trust me. My whole purpose behind Fitness Basics, it's to tell you what you need to hear when it comes to losing fat in a sustainable and achievable way that you just could not have done it any better with any other way. So I want to bust a lot of conflicting, controversial advice, misleading advice, headlines, articles telling you what you want to hear, and it's just not what's in the best interest for the person and the consumer. So with me, I really hope that you're going to be learning and taking on the right information for yourself. please look at the other pieces of content that I'll put out. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and yeah, you've learned a thing or two there. Thank you. Ta-ra.